So, you want to be a world traveler. You want to sit in cafes in Paris and beer gardens in Berlin and opera houses in Budapest. You want to be a cosmopolitan novelist writing the next bestseller while living in Japan or Thailand. That's great, and that's a wonderful ambition, but there's a yawning chasm between being a tourist and being a traveler. To be well-traveled is not just to have traveled a lot, but to have traveled well. A tourist rides into town on a crowded bus and hops out taking photos with their smartphone, and eats at some corny restaurant advertising authentic Hungarian food. By the way, if a restaurant calls itself authentic, especially if the word authentic is written in English, it's not authentic. I once saw a restaurant in Budapest declaring authentic Hungarian food, live gypsy music. Avoid those places like the plague. Now, obviously, I'm not some kind of expert. I know plenty of people who are way better traveled than I am, shout out Holly, and I've had plenty of cringeworthy tourist moments. But I have just returned from a pretty epic trip, and I want to share my philosophy of travel with you and tell you about a few of my embarrassing mistakes so that you can avoid them. Also, I am well aware that this whole conversation can seem very elitist. Most people just can't afford to ride a llama into the Himalayas and meditate with the gurus. And for a lot of people, a cheap tour on a crowded bus might be the closest they ever come to traveling, and I'm not here to make anyone feel bad or to gatekeep the idea of travel. People say things like, don't just stay for a day, stay in each town for a week, and it's like, yeah, believe me, pal, I wish I could. But I have student loans to pay, and my dad doesn't own a private jet. If you can afford to travel in luxury and spend entire weeks in foreign cities, good for you, but the vast majority of people throughout all of human history have not been able to afford that. So take this video with a grain of salt, and please understand that I got very lucky by meeting professors who seem to think I have potential for some reason. And I've landed some internships that pay for me to travel Europe because I absolutely could not afford this on my own. That being said, there are ways to become more of a traveler and less of a tourist without ending up as a homeless prostitute stranded in Bulgaria. Happened to a buddy of mine, rest in peace, Jaden. So, in no particular order and with absolutely no pretense of objectivity, here is my advice for making your journeys as cool and interesting as possible and looking back on them with pride instead of with embarrassment. One, find your routine. I spent almost a week living in Paris, and it was beyond words. It was not at all what I thought Paris would be like. It was completely different and completely wonderful and something I will never forget. Every morning I woke up at 7 a.m. and walked down to my favorite cafe. I'll explain why it was my favorite in a bit. After drinking a cappuccino and eating my breakfast, I would walk across the Pont Neuf and attend the 8 a.m. Mass at Notre Dame. Yes, that Notre Dame. This is probably the simplest advice I can give, but it's absolutely the most important. If you don't remember any of my other suggestions, please remember this. It is so easy to arrive in a new city and just drift from tourist attraction to tourist attraction, checking things off your bucket list. That's fine if you're in a hurry and sometimes you're only in a city for a day and it is what it is, but you won't really feel like you lived there. You'll feel like you were just passing through. If you have even 2 days, please find a couple things to do each day. It is incredible how much of a difference that alone makes. 2, don't speak English. Or at least, don't start with English. If the place you're visiting speaks a foreign language, Please just learn a couple simple phrases. You will feel like an idiot, you will definitely screw it up and sound like a chimpanzee spouting gibberish, but the locals really do appreciate it. Just put in the effort. It really only takes an hour to learn thank you, hello, sorry, and I don't speak your language very well. I know people make fun of Duolingo, they say it's just a silly game, but just doing it for about 5 months was enough that I could speak simple sentences in both French and German. And I often had entire conversations in those languages where I actually understood what the other person said. On my first day in Paris, I walked into a small hole-in-the-wall cafe. I said, "Bonjour, monsieur," to which the owner politely replied, "Où voulez-vous vous asseoir?" To which I politely replied, Now you might be thinking, silly Arthur, that's not the right response. The right response is, "Je ne parle pas très bien le français, désolé." But you know what? It's not that bloody easy when you're put on the spot in the middle of a French cafe, okay? After a moment, I stammered out, "Parlez-vous anglais?" Which is French for, "I'm an idiot, sorry for being in your country, can you please use my baby language?" Now, as it turned out, this old French man was very jolly and just a wonderful guy, and he said, "Oh, monsieur, c'est Paris, je parle français." And I said, right then, je voudrais un cappuccino, s'il vous plaît. He laughed, slapped me on the back, and led me to a table. After a moment, I remembered that I do in fact know a bit of French, so I said, "Monsieur, je voudrais de l'eau." And when he brought me a glass of water while correcting my pronunciation, I said, "Merci, monsieur. Le cappuccino est très bon." He found this very amusing, and after a few minutes, he brought out a bowl of delicious jelly, kindly explaining that it was on the house. I felt like the favorite cat at a Buddhist monastery, and I returned to that cafe every morning for the rest of the trip. One day, I was sipping my usual cappuccino when these American women walked in, and they didn't even try. They didn't even say bonjour and merci. I overheard one of them say, "What's the French word for croissant?" And the owner was visibly less friendly with them and hurried them out. Let this be a lesson for you. On my last day in Paris, I arrived later than usual because I came from the Eiffel Tower, and when I walked in, there was this girl and she started leading me to a table. Then the owner walked out, and as soon as he saw me, he yelled, "Alleluia, mon ami!" It was probably the best moment of the trip, and I don't think I've ever gained so much aura at once. 3. Do something stupid. I don't mean get drunk and throw up in the Louvre or pick a fight with the local crazy person. Please don't do things that will actually get you hurt or arrested. That can really ruin your life, and that's not worth it just for the dad lore or whatever. Your mom loves you too much for you to hurt yourself, okay? What I mean is that you should do something you can't even imagine yourself doing. Something so far beyond your comfort zone that you're not even sure it's possible. For me, this was staying in hostels. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm an introvert to an almost psychopathic degree. I absolutely need my own space. I need peace and quiet, and I hate talking to new people. So staying in hostels where you share a shower and a room with 5 people you've never met before sounds like a terrible idea. That's exactly why I did it. As it turned out, everything was wonderful. The hostels I stayed at were clean and cozy and quiet, exactly what I needed. If you're ever in Paris, I highly recommend the Eclos Hotel. It's right beside the Paris exhibition, and it really feels like you're staying in a swanky hotel. Your little sleeping bunk has a charging port and a shelf and a curtain, and in the morning you get free banana bread. Everyone I met was lovely. Shout out to Jean-Baptiste, shout out to the girls from Vancouver Island, shout out to the dude from Nebraska. I hope your pilgrimage really does bring you closer to God, and shout out to my Toronto guy. I expected my fellow travelers to be loud partygoers who were only going to Paris to get laid. I was afraid they'd be bringing back beer to the room and playing music all night long and so forth. As it turned out, everyone I met was a lot like me. Young people who just want to see cool things and are just excited to be there. I packed very, very lightly, so I only had 1 pair of shoes. And they were these white sneakers. My grandfather had bought them for me at a Walmart in Maryland, but since that day I hadn't worn them once, and they were good as new. By the end of the journey, of course, they were crinkled and completely covered in dirt and pollen. Maybe I'm too sentimental, but I think it's kind of beautiful that the same pair of shoes traveled with me all the way from a Walmart in Chelsea Beach, Maryland, to the banks of the Seine and the heights of the Alps. It reminded me that I come from somewhere, and I'm bringing all those memories and loyalties with me halfway across the world, and there really is no place like home. I was explaining all this to one of my roommates at a hostel, only for him to smile and point down at his own tattered white shoes, and I realized that he was doing the exact same thing. 4. If you're going to church, go to church. When I got to the Notre Dame Cathedral for the morning mass, I found out that I would have to wait in line. It was a very long line, full of jabbering tourists, and I later found out that even the locals who go to church there have to wait in that line every morning. Imagine how annoying that must be, having to wait in line at your own church with dozens of tourists who are just there to take selfies. Sure enough, when I finally got inside, I saw that 90% of people were just taking photos. Their comically childish attempts to be pious just made it worse. Even at the front of the church, where a sign explicitly says reserved for prayer, people were taking photos of the priest. And of course, there were several girls wearing the shawl of shame. If you don't know what that is, visit a European cathedral with bare shoulders and you'll soon find out. So, if you visit a church while a service is going on, please don't take photos, and for God's sake, don't pretend you know what you're doing. That is so much more embarrassing than just doing it wrong. You don't have to know when to sit and stand. You don't have to understand the service. How could you if you don't speak French? If you are a Christian, that's all the qualification you need. And yes, I did take communion because I am in communion with the Pope, even if he's not in communion with me. 5. Don't stress about being authentic. On the one hand, you don't want to be a tourist, you want to really immerse yourself in the culture. But on the other hand, some people worry about this way too much. In fact, obsessively trying to make everything authentic is one of the most touristy things you can do. I try to imagine if one of my European friends visited America. To really give him an American experience, I would take him to the local pizza buffet and my favorite Thai restaurant and my favorite Mexican place. Now he might object, "Wait, Arthur, I want authentic American food. Let's go to a 1950s diner and get burgers and milkshakes." That would obviously be silly because people don't just eat exclusively authentic food. Most people like eating food from other cultures because it's awesome and food is probably the best thing about being alive. In Germany, for instance, Doner is extremely popular. It's basically a Turkish wrap with slivers of lamb meat, and it's one of the best foods in the world. Now, if I was obsessed with being authentic, I would say, no, Doner isn't German. But it is actually, and it is authentic because Germans like eating it. In the same way, Chinese takeout and Mexican food are some of the most quintessential American foods, and they're a classic part of the American way of life. So don't stress about authenticity. Sometimes you just want a burger to remind you of home, and that's okay. One of my most interesting experiences was a quote, American-style restaurant in Orléans, which served delicious burgers and, unlike most European restaurants, provided free water. That is the American way. Along these same lines, I'm gonna slightly contradict myself and say, don't be embarrassed about taking pictures. Don't be disrespectful, don't take photos during a church service or in Auschwitz or something, but there's nothing wrong with taking photos of the buildings and the cool things you're seeing. It's not weird, it's not embarrassing, you're there to see cool things. I don't know why we've decided that it's embarrassing to be excited about what you're seeing. Everyone else is also excited, that's why you're all there. 6. Travel like a novelist. One of the worst ways to ruin a trip is to judge your destination. Oh, this city is ugly. This city is dirty. This city is terribly managed. Those might all be completely true, but when you visit a new place, you have to have the attitude of a novelist. In a good book, there are really beautiful and nice places, but there are also dark and ugly places. In The Lord of the Rings, there is the Shire and there is Rivendell, but there is also Moria. Not all the characters are beautiful, some of them are ugly and repulsive like Gollum. But in a weird way, having those ugly places and characters makes The Lord of the Rings more beautiful. It would be a pretty boring story if everything was just perfect, right? One of the paradoxes of art is that there is immense beauty in ugliness. Take India, for instance. If you visit the slums of Mumbai, you're gonna see a lot of ugliness, a lot of cardboard shacks, and rivers of garbage and toothless beggars. Now, as a compassionate human being, I want India to become a more happy place. As an environmentalist, I want the Ganges to be clean again. But as a novelist, I can see that there's a certain morbid beauty in the ugliness and squalor of the slums. I felt the same way in DC. I would never want to live in Anacostia, but visiting it is a fascinating experience. As Oscar Wilde said, an artist has no ethical sympathies. An ethical sympathy in an artist is an unpardonable mannerism of style. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have political opinions. In fact, any good artist is a partisan, and Oscar Wilde himself wrote an essay defending socialism. But in your role qua novelist, you must see the beauty in everything. You must take an amoral view of the world. On the other hand, it is also fun to notice what other countries do better. France, for instance, has wonderful public transportation that is very comfortable, safe, and efficient. It made getting around Paris so convenient, and America should absolutely take notes. France also has much better architecture. The city feels lived in. Old world cities are a spider web of neighborhoods, not just a bunch of skyscrapers like Charlotte or Atlanta. France also gets most of its energy from nuclear power, which is so much better for the environment than fossil fuels or coal. You'll also notice that free public restrooms aren't really a thing in France. In America, all restrooms are open to the public because we have a law that you aren't allowed to charge people to use the bathroom. Which sounds nice in theory, but then the homeless people and the thugs completely trash all the restrooms, and there's toilet paper on the floor, and it smells disgusting, and the walls are covered in graffiti. In Paris, you have to pay €1 to use the restroom, but once you're inside, the bathrooms are pristine and tidy, and you feel perfectly safe. Also, in Europe, the bathroom doors actually go down to the floor, unlike in America, where we are absolute barbarians, as you know if you've ever glimpsed a man's entire schlong through the door crack. Not based on a true story or anything. Okay, this next part's gonna sound a little weird, but just hear me out. Race really isn't a thing in France. Now, I'm sure there is racism and some tension, but in general, it feels completely different than America. Black people in Paris don't seem to think of themselves as other, and they don't seem to be hostile towards the French. They just are French. It really reminded me of when my dad describes living in the 90s. I saw black people and white people hanging out together all the time, and they seemed to share the same culture, the same clothes, the same accent. In America, there is, sadly, this unspoken hostility, and if you as a white person walk past a black person, they will often regard you with a bit of suspicion, or even anger, depending on the neighborhood. There are probably a couple reasons for this. First, France never had slaves. There were plenty of slaves in its colonies, of course, and that's horrible, but France itself was considered free soil all the way back to the medieval times, meaning that anyone who set foot there was automatically free. Tocqueville spoke of this. He said that white and black Americans can never live peacefully together because they will always remember the brutality of chattel slavery, and there will always be this unspoken sense of, your ancestors owned my ancestors. You can really see this when it comes to interracial dating. In America, you have interracial couples, but it's rare and kind of weirdly fetishized. In France, I saw interracial couples all the time, and very good-looking couples. Everyone is good-looking. I have never seen so many beautiful girls, and as my friends know, I have very high standards. Ah, Paris, the best of cities, the worst of cities. If you're expecting a movie scene where everything smells like roses and the city lights up with love and romance, you're in for a disappointment. It's a city, not everything is beautiful, and sometimes it doesn't really feel like you're in Paris. We have such a mythologized idea of the city that it feels like the real Paris must be waiting just around the corner, but it's not. That is the actual Eiffel Tower and the actual Louvre. By the way, don't visit the Louvre on Friday. They close half the Egyptian section for some reason. I was very angry because I wanted to see Moses' mummified cat, but I did not. Anyway, as you all know, I'm a huge fan of Oscar Wilde, so of course, I had to visit the hotel where he died. I walked in with as much confidence as I could muster and said, "Je ne parle pas français très bien, désolé, parlez-vous anglais?" To which the girl responded, "I do." So I said, "My name's Arthur, I'm a student from Oxford, and I'm looking to study Oscar Wilde. Can I see his room?" Well, turns out they've renovated the building, so his old room is gone, but I went to the spot where it used to be, which is now a minibar. I had quite a few days in Paris, so I tried to fit everything in. I saw the Mona Lisa, I saw the Code of Hammurabi, and in the Musée d'Orsay, I saw Renoir's portrait of Wagner. I really wanted a picture with Wagner, but I didn't know how to ask in French, so I pretended to be a German trying to speak French and said to the lady beside me, "Excuse-moi, kannst du ein Foto machen?" As I smiled for the photo, an American woman walked by and said, "Are you related? You look just like him." Which was a pretty great moment for me. Like, yes, you know what? I am in fact Wagner's great-grandson. Nice to meet you. I saw the tomb of Napoleon and paid my respects. I saw the Pantheon. I saw the Tuileries Gardens. And I ate at a boulangerie, which, according to a French professor who happens to be a mentor of mine, is the best bakery in Paris. But I really fell in love with the city one evening as I was walking along the banks of the Seine. All along the river, people were sitting on the banks just having a good time. Friends gossiping, couples making out, awkward teenagers on first dates, and old married couples sitting quietly, many of them probably celebrating anniversaries. I tried to remember that everyone else was here for the same reason as me, that behind every stressed out white lady with a so-called Karen haircut is someone's mom who just wants to feel young and adventurous again. The sound of bands playing by the river and the feeling of looking out across the city at the exact moment when the streetlights come on is one of my favorite memories from the whole trip. I also made a day trip to Orléans, an ancient city on the banks of the Loire, which is where New Orleans got its mispronounced name. I saw the statue of Joan of Arc, my favorite strong independent woman who saved Orléans from the invasion of the perfidious Anglo, as prophesied by Merlin. I also saw the church where she went to Mass, which was this awesome Gothic cathedral with gargoyles. I made another day trip to Versailles, where I saw the legendary palace of the Sun King and took a long walk through a beautiful park. I highly recommend Versailles. It is quaint, and there's lots of trees, and it's a huge breath of fresh air after 3 days in Paris. The park by the lake is one of my favorite places in the entire world. Okay, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. So I'm currently on a boat rowing around at the Palace of Versailles. If you've never been there, which you should, the Palace of Versailles is huge, and then there's the gardens all around behind it, and the gardens are just beautiful, breathtakingly beautiful. It's all these forests and statues, but there's this huge waterway that runs down the center, and apparently they rent out boats, so you can get on a boat and paddle around. Now, when I booked the ticket, I assumed it was going to be some kind of cheesy tourist thing where you get on a boat with like 6 other people and then there's this tour guide paddling you around. But no, you're on the boat by yourself and you paddle it yourself. So I'm free to just go wherever I want all the way down the river. So if you ever go to Versailles, which I recommend, make sure to do the boat rides. On my way to the Charles de Gaulle airport, I told my Uber driver that I was living in Budapest, and he was absolutely horrified that I wasn't there. You see, it's kind of hilarious. That week was the football final in Budapest, and everyone from all over the world was coming to the city, and here I was traipsing around France. I tried to explain to him that I just couldn't care less about football, and The European mind just cannot register such a concept. Some strange things happen to you on the trail. You start to really appreciate the little things. A water fountain, a public restroom, or best of all, a place to charge your phone seems like heaven on earth. Also, all your problems in life start to feel really small. When you're running late to catch a train in a foreign country and you're not even sure if the tickets you bought from that sketchy website will work, it's hard to feel stressed about grades and careers. But also, you have a lot of time to just think and mull things over, and you realize things about yourself that you never knew. You also become very attached to your stuff. After all, you don't have any other belongings in the whole country. I carried these things halfway across the world. My leather messenger bag, which was a gift from Uncle Matt. My water bottle with these Save the Turtle stickers to remind me of home, and my Yggdrasil necklace, which was a gift from my mother. She actually has an identical necklace, so I think about her whenever I wear it. It brought me a lot of comfort, especially on the more difficult parts of the trip. After I left Paris, I flew to Zurich, Switzerland, and took a couple hours to just walk along the riverbank. It was truly magnificent. The Alps felt so huge and close that you just wanted to reach out and touch them. Then I boarded a train to Sargans, and when I reached the station, I wandered into the Alps in search of my own personal Holy Land. Well, I am here in Switzerland, and I have been walking for about 3 hours through the Alps. I am very tired, and my phone is about to die, but I just saw Vaduz Castle on the horizon, the homeland, the site of my pilgrimage. That is the castle where the king, or the prince, I guess, the prince of Liechtenstein lives. And I am on a holy mission, so I'm gonna get there one way or another. And even if my phone dies, now I can just be guided by the sight of it on the horizon. The mountains are impossibly huge. It's like a wall just rising up in the sky. It kind of reminds me of at the end of the Don Shredder, that Narnia book where they sail out to the far west when they see the wave that just rises into the sky and just keeps going forever. That's what the mountains feel like. They're, I think, bigger than most of the mountains I've seen in America. Obviously, out west, we have comparable mountains. But all around me is just farmland and the most beautiful, pristine little farms and cattle. This is paradise, man. This is the homeland. See, people are like, oh, the confederacies can't work. You have to have big nation states. And it's like Liechtenstein, literally heaven on earth. Switzerland, made up of a bajillion tiny cantons all joined together in a confederacy. The greatest nation on earth, like one of the wealthiest, most beautiful environment, deeply eco-friendly, while also has an incredible economy. It's like, this just is obviously the best way to organize human society. So I'll report back when I reach the castle. Hey, ladies. Hey. What a nice view you have. What's up, boys? It is officially white boy summer in Liechtenstein. I'm currently standing here in the Rhine River, the beautiful, bright, crystal blue river that flows down from the Alps. I can see snow from where I'm standing, and you can definitely tell standing here in this river because it is cold as the ninth circle of hell in Dante's Inferno. It feels very refreshing, and my feet needed this after walking for a little over 4 hours through the Alps. Let me tell you something. When I came over the rise and I saw the Rhine River, blue as can be, spreading out to the horizon, and beyond that, Liechtenstein and the castle of Vaduz and the mountains rising up to the sky, I broke down crying. I felt like how Muslims must feel when they reach Mecca for the first time, or how Reepicheep felt when he saw the land beyond the Western Sea. I felt like how Christians in the medieval ages must have felt when, after years and years of pilgrimage, they finally reached the city of Jerusalem. It's even more wonderful than I thought. You know, they talk about the Paris effect, where you hype up Paris in your head so much, you think it's this like beautiful, romantic city of lights. Then you get there and it's a little bit dirty, and it's kind of crowded, and it's just like daytime there, just like anywhere else. It's not in a state of perpetual twilight, and people get genuinely depressed because Paris doesn't match their expectations. This is the complete opposite of that. Liechtenstein is so much more beautiful and wonderful than I thought. Really, no pictures or videos can do a justification. Even this video, it looks like I'm kind of just standing in a little river. This is like a vast, bright blue expanse. So you kind of have to come here for yourself. But anyway, happy white boy summer, everyone. Love you all. Mwah. I spent most of the day in Vaduz, the capital of Liechtenstein, and then took a bus way up into the mountains to a little town called Malboon. In the winter, it's a ski resort and people from all over Europe come to get away for a week. But in the summer, it's a very quiet little town sitting at the very top of the Alps. In a strange way, it reminded me of home. I was born and raised in the south, in the Appalachians, where the mountains are always there on the horizon, and everyone is friendly and just wants to mind their own business and live their peaceful, simple lives. In the morning, I did a bit of hiking and got on board a train to Salzburg. I gotta say, Salzburg was not my favorite. Maybe it's because I went there on a gray and cloudy day, but it just wasn't very nice, and almost nobody I passed in the street was actually Austrian. I will say that on my walk to the Mirabel Gardens, where they filmed The Sound of Music, I stopped for some doner, and it was the most delicious meal I had on the whole trip. The Turkish gentleman who worked there was very kind, and when I said I was from America, he said, "That's amazing!" Anyways, after the Mirabel Gardens, I walked to Mozart's birthplace, and the house where he composed his music, which is funny because I don't even like Mozart. I'm Team Beethoven all the way. The next morning, I took the train to Germany. I have to admit, as much as I love the German people, I found myself agreeing with Nietzsche that Germany is a very gray and dreary land. It was cloudy and overcast, and I felt kind of miserable. Nonetheless, I made my way to the little town of Bayreuth, where my favorite composer of all time lived and died, Richard Wagner. As soon as I reached Wagner's grave, the clouds disappeared and the sun shone down. I walked away listening to the Lohengrin Prelude and got some ice cream, and I was a happy boy. Bayreuth was a quaint and charming little town, and walking through Wagner's gardens, I found it very appropriate that so much nature had been preserved in honor of this man who cared so much about beauty. I also noticed that his home was right next to Franz Liszt's home, another great composer. I never knew they were neighbors. When my train arrived in Weimar, my phone was at 8%. I knew it wouldn't be enough to reach the hotel, and I could already see myself wandering the streets all night, hopelessly lost without Google Maps. I asked the tourism desk if they could charge my phone. They said no for some reason, which struck me as very unhelpful. In a bit of a panic, I just walked into the city, hoping that I would come across a Starbucks or some other civilized institution that would have a charging port. Then I saw an Italian restaurant. I hurried in and said, "Entschuldigen, ich möchte essen, aber ich muss aussi mein Handy aufladen." The waiter was very kind and he let me charge my phone, so I ordered a pizza. It was delicious. I heartily enjoyed it, but when it came time to pay the bill, he wouldn't take my card. Turns out this restaurant was cash only. Well, I didn't have any euros. I tried to explain this and the waiter just said, "Follow me." He led me out of the restaurant and down the street, and I started to wonder if he was about to shoot me, which seemed like a bit of an overreaction over a $10 pizza. Then he brought me to the ATM. Perfect! Except that the ATM wouldn't accept my card. I couldn't understand the error message because it was in German, and the waiter had already gone back to the restaurant. I walked into a neighboring shop and asked the woman, "Ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch, aber ich brauche mein Bankautomat. Kannst du mich helfen?" She didn't speak a word of English, but we stumbled through a conversation, and she tried to help me with the ATM. Still nothing. I went back to the restaurant, expecting police cars to surround me at any moment, and explain the situation. In the end, I just gave him $20 in American cash, $7 more than what I owed in euros, and he seemed happy with that. So there's another lesson for you: carry some extra euros in cash. Next, I walked to the grocery store and bought a potato. That will come important later. Then I walked to Goethe's house, the author of Faust, and to Liszt's house, the composer of Lebensraum, not to be confused with Lebensraum. Love dream versus living space, very different concepts, but they sound quite similar to the Anglophone ear. In the morning, I set off for Potsdam and visited the palace of Frederick the Great. As long-term viewers of the channel know, Frederick the Great is one of my heroes. He was a Prussian king who both liberalized the economy, leading to tremendous material prosperity, but also patronized high culture. He himself played the flute and was known for his compassion for animals. I visited his palace, Sanssouci, and as promised, left a potato on his grave. Okay, folks, in honor of Pride Month, I am here at the grave of Frederick the Great, who, of course, was the single greatest gay person in European history. And I have a potato, and I'm going to set it on his grave, because this is a tradition, because Frederick the Great is known for introducing potatoes to the German economy, which saved a lot of people from starvation. Actually, you can see it. Some other people have already left their potatoes, so I'm going to add mine to the stack. This is a very solemn moment. Next, I visited Berlin, the capital of Germany. I saw the Reichstag, the remnants of the Berlin Wall, the Brandenburg Gate, and the site of the bunker where Hitler killed himself, which is now an unmarked parking garage. They destroyed the place and paved over it so that Nazi sympathizers wouldn't have the chance to pay their respects. Or leave potatoes on his grave, I guess. I have to say, I wasn't a huge fan of Berlin. If the signs weren't in German, you would think you were in an American city. Which is to say, everything was gray and boring and there was no real street culture. Of course, there are some wonderful cities in America, like Philadelphia or Greenville or Santa Barbara. But in general, the best parts of America are the quiet countryside escapes, and I have a feeling Germany is the same way. My German friends tell me that the South, Bavaria, is significantly better than the North, and I'm inclined to believe them. There's an important lesson here about not overgeneralizing Europe. It's easy as an American to say, oh look, Europe does it this way, but America does it this way. And that's kind of silly, right? America and Europe are both very big places with a lot of very different regions and cities within them. Germany and France feel very different from each other, and they both in turn feel completely different from Eastern or Central Europe. At first, I was kind of annoyed by Berlin, but I was also starting to feel pretty homesick at this point, and walking along the river really felt like America in kind of a comforting way. Berlin is not a great city, but I enjoyed seeing the iconic Berlin TV tower and the Nefertiti statue in the new museum, which of course features on the cover of my favorite lesbian's magnum opus, Sexual Personae. I got some pad thai at this trendy food court and boarded a train for Krakow. By the time I got there, it was very late and I was exhausted. Trains in Poland are a little different, and by different I mean terrible. Almost every train I booked in Poland got delayed or just never showed up, so my journey to Krakow was delayed by over an hour. The train was also completely full, so I had to sit on the floor with a bunch of Poles, which was kind of wholesome. We were all just sitting there deep into the night as our train soared into the Polish countryside. Out the windows, I saw lots of concrete and orange streetlights. That classic Central European post-Soviet vibe that we all know and love. Lots of liminal spaces. When I finally arrived in Krakow, I hardly noticed the castles and statues, and I hurried to Das Hostel. It felt a bit like a haunted Victorian mansion, and there were 6 other people in the room, but I was so tired that I didn't even care and I went right to sleep. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. and met my Polish friend Anthony at a McDonald's of all places. I guess he wanted to make the American feel at home. We made our way to Auschwitz, the infamous Nazi concentration camp, and wow, it was an experience. Walking through the gas chambers and seeing that awful gate, Arbeit macht frei, work will make you free, hearing about all the torture and the humiliation and the people who lost their homes and families and just wanted to live normal lives, it was truly disturbing. When you're there, you can't help sympathizing with the so-called post-war liberal consensus. This idea that we have to completely reshape society to make sure this never happens again.
Oh man.
Okay, guys, I am now here in Poland, and how do you pronounce the name of this town?
Well, it's Oświęcim. Oświęcim.
Hopeless for me to even try, but
Austrian clusters, welcome to Poland.
yeah, we just got back from Auschwitz,
Yeah.
which I guess is our idea of a good first date.
The moods are high, ladies and gentlemen. The moods are high.
Yeah, so I mean, it was fucking crazy. We saw like the shoes, like thousands and thousands
Yeah,
of
the
shoes all
shoes.
piled up. We saw like the ropes made out of hair from the prisoners. It was a pretty chilling experience, and it also seeing all the suitcases and the baskets and everything. It all looked very like something straight out of It's a Wonderful Life or like the 1940s. Like it all looked like things that my grandmother could own. I was saying it looked like things I would find in my grandma's attic.
They were well preserved too, right? Like, as if they were like left enough ago.
Yes, as if they were just left there at the train station. So it makes you realize just how recent it was. But anyway, we're both super tired because you were on a all night train, and then I've been traveling for like 12 days. But tonight I'm gonna get back to my apartment in Budapest, have a shower, do my laundry. It's gonna be great. But we're here at a restaurant which
Yeah.
you have said is probably the most authentic thing that we can, besides one of those taverns.
For the region.
For the region and
For the
for
region.
only having like an hour before I have to catch my train. So,
Yeah.
peace out. After we filmed this and I made that cheeky little joke about it being our first date, Anthony reminded me that gay marriage is still illegal in Poland, which is kind of crazy, right? Like, this is a modern European nation. It's part of the EU, but it's also illegal to be gay there. It's a strange anachronism because we definitely think of gay marriage as a settled issue. I guess it goes to show how quickly things have changed that gay marriage was illegal in America during Obama's presidency, but it now seems shocking that it's still illegal anywhere. I didn't get too many photos of Poland, but I really enjoyed my time there. It was a nice little ending to my trip, and as I told Anthony, it felt strangely American. We tried to catch the Corpus Christi festival, but it was already over, so we went to a little Polish restaurant for lunch. I ordered some delicious stew with bread, and we shared a bowl of pierogi. It felt exactly like the sort of roadside restaurant where I used to stop with my parents on day trips, complete with wooden picnic tables, a pirate ship playground, and those old restaurant umbrellas with the Coca-Cola logo on them. It's a very nostalgic and surreal brand of Americana, and Anthony reminded me that in terms of loving capitalism in the USA, the only countries more American than America are Korea and Poland. Maybe that's why I know so many Americans who moved to Poland and felt more at home there. I guess that's my final piece of advice. Traveling is so much better if you meet up with someone who actually lives there. Anthony showed me around the city, told me all kinds of deep lore about how Poland is actually an aristocratic meritocracy ruled by historians, and we had lots of fun comparing our different cultures. So if any of you live in places I might want to visit, let me know. It could actually happen, especially if you live in Vienna. One of the coolest things about having this channel is that I have friends in all kinds of crazy places, and it's awesome. On the drive back to the train station, Anthony and I were talking about Israel, and the taxi driver suddenly chimed in, "Fuck Israel!" Sorry for the profanity, but that's what he said. He said it, not me, I'm just quoting. The train ride back to Budapest was very long, and I somehow lost my phone charger, which was very annoying, but a very kind Polish woman let me use hers, and everything was okay, and my long adventure was finally over. To quote Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit, well, I'm back. I really can't express how nice it feels just to be back in my own little room with my own little bathroom and my own little kitchen and my own little mini fridge and my own little chairs. It's really nice. I've got my shower here. There's not other people. No one's gonna walk past. There's no chance that I'm gonna, not find my hotel or miss my train. It's just, I'm here. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I got my stuff with me. It's all good. And, the feeling of coming home after vacation is one of the best parts of the vacation, ironically enough. Which is weird because this isn't actually my home. This is a rented apartment in Budapest. and my home is in America, thousands of miles away. Um, but I guess absence makes the heart grow fonder. And after being away from here for a week, coming back to this space feels really nice. Budapest feels like home. As I was seeing the signs on the train that said like Budapest New Gotti, next stop, I was like, yes, Budapest. Uh, and before I left on that vacation, in my first couple weeks here in Budapest, I felt pretty homesick for America. But now I guess my brain has registered this as like a home base, as a headquarters. And so I feel at home now. And I have a feeling that having this little vacation near the beginning of the summer is going to make the rest of my summer in Budapest that much better, just because I'm going to think of this as like a home that I came back to. And, I guess objectively I would be happier back in America with my family and everything. But right now, I just feel pretty content being here. Um, so yeah, maybe the real vacation was the homes we missed along the way. And I'm kind of making a serious point there, insofar as you know, missing things, missing people, missing places is one of the most beautiful human experiences, I think. And you don't really realize how much you love something until you're away from it. So for me, I remember when I started school, when I started college, because I was homeschooled, right? So this was the first time I'd really been away from my parents. That was the first time I realized just how much I love my parents and how much I love my home, my woods walks, and my brothers and my sisters and my dog. That's what really catalyzed it. And so it made coming home so beautiful and meaningful and rich in a way that just staying home would not. You have to leave the things you love. You have to leave the places that make you happiest in order to reach peak happiness in those places, because to really really appreciate something you have to miss it for a little bit and then come back to it. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about America right now. I've been to Italy and Canada very briefly, but this is my first time really being out of the country. And it's making me realize just how much I love American culture and the American way of life, the American landscapes, the stores we have, the middle class bourgeois lifestyle of, driving to a restaurant with the family, parking the minivan, having a night out, uh, all this stuff, the little things that you don't really think about until they're not there anymore. And it's not that I think America is better than everywhere else. I'm certainly not a chauvinist, and it's not that I want the rest of the world to become like America. I think it's cool that all these different places are their own different places. That's what makes it fun to travel. That's what makes exploring an adventure. But I do love America the most because it's my home and it's what is closest to my heart. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that uh, maybe we don't live human lives just to feel content all the time. Maybe we live for those heights of emotion. We live to feel, born to feel, like the hippies used to say. We're born into this world so we can experience those deep and profound emotions. We are born to loosh farm, uh, to to reach those heights, which are both good and bad, sad and happy, because those are the most beautiful human moments of our lives, moments of reuniting or moments of loss. That's when things really reach their zenith. But anyway, it's kind of late, so I might be being a bit too philosophical about it, but I'm back from my little trip, biggest trip that I'd ever been on by far. I've been to, I've transformed the number of countries I've been to from 3 to like 12. It's pretty wild, and I'm super tired, so love you all. See you next time. Goodbye.